I thought we might be done talking about Coldplay, but we're not. This is actually really interesting. So if you remember back to the Coldplay kiss cam incident, right, where two executives caught on camera cheating, the story that went viral, that image that went viral and spawned so many memes, some of them actually quite funny. Well, it's kind of made its way back to the boardroom, if you will, where companies are now looking again at revisiting their workplace relationship policies. Remember, the two people caught here, I guess one was like a vice president, the other was the head of HR. And Chris Dimakos taking a look at this on our CJAD Legal Corner for today. So Chris, when I say revisiting, policies have been in place for a long, long time. What does this mean when we say revisiting? Revisiting how and why?
Well, they're revisiting workplace relationships, and that doesn't only include romantic ones. What they're finding out now is that, especially with all the new awareness that we have in the workplace, they're trying to figure out how to assess risk. Like this event that happened at the Coldplay concert, I know we have two resignations on file. They appear to be resignations. I can tell you from experience that I would be shocked if they didn't get an incentive to resign, a financial incentives, and otherwise the company probably told them, if you don't accept, then we're going to not pay you anything. We're going to let you go, and we're going to battle this out in court. It's going to cost you money. So, but that being said, the key here is there's a risk, and the risk, companies are now always trying to mitigate risk. And like you mentioned, they've had workplace, disclosure policies in the past where if you're in a workplace relationship, you have to disclose it to HR. That used to be the extent to what companies were satisfied with. It's no longer the case because just knowing about it doesn't allow you to prevent something from going wrong. Someone alleging, hey, I was harassed. Yes, I was in a relationship. It was my superior, but things happened that I didn't consent to. And then, it becomes this huge snowball where everyone starts talking about toxic workplace environment, toxic culture, and the companies then gets faced with multiple lawsuits. So, the days of just click on this link and disclose, those days seem to be over. Now they want to know not only, what kind of relationship you're in, but even if you are roommates, let's say, or you're best friends and you're spending a lot of time away from the office together, they want to know about it and they want to look at what the risks are. And in some cases, they'll actually change your job position and the structure where you work. They might have you in separate departments. And courts have reinforced this. A company has a right to protect itself. So, to answer your question, yes, it's evolving. And after this incident, many major law firms were tasked with, hey, take a look at our workplace relationship policy. And if you need to revamp it, please do so. We don't want to have the same situation here as what we saw with the company Astronomer.
So let me ask a dumb question, as I do from time to time. The case we're talking about on the Coldplay kiss cam, right? So the idea here was it's an executive with an underling, if I can put it that way, right?
Right.
If these were two people, just happen to be employees at that company, we wouldn't be talking about this right now, would we?
Probably not. Probably not because their positions were not those that presented risk for the company. If you were just two regular level employees that had a relationship that were at a concert, it's not so bad. But when you have the CEO and you have the head of HR that's entrusted with governance of all these types of relationships, that's there's no question that their job titles played a major role in how big this became and how quickly they were forced to resign.
So I asked that because I think back to a story we probably did a while ago where we talked about actually office romances, relationships that begin in office and actually end up with people getting married and going out, etc. And it would seem to me now, by virtue of what happened here, you have to be extra careful even if there is no reason to be careful, but just by virtue of this having happened.
Right. And the key here is one is disclosure. That's where we started. If you look back, 15 years of where employment workplace relationship policy was, it was all about disclosure. Let the company know what's going on. Some companies actually try to ban workplace relationships, and those didn't work, because it's discriminatory. If you want to get married to somebody, you can't be prohibited from doing so because you work at the same company. But the companies now are realizing, hey, you know what? Once these relationships, let's say, fall apart, or if something happens in the relationship that, that's not good, well, our company's dragged through with this. It's not just two people breaking up. Well, it's the company that's usually involved,
Yeah.
even though they don't want to be, and they do not want to be. And that's the key there. They do not want to be involved in these things. So now what they're saying is, not only are you going to let us know, but now we're going to look at where you work, who you work with, what your job title is. We don't want any of your coworkers to say, "Oh, there's favoritism here. Oh, well, it's toxic the way it works. If you have to be in a relationship with an executive to be able to get ahead." They don't want that. So
Okay.
Not only is it disclosure now it's, well, let's reconfigure. Let's do what needs to be done to eliminate as much risk as we can.
Okay, so again, this is about a power imbalance, and I understand that especially within a big company like that, right? The Coldplay one is exactly that. It's head of HR, as you said, and a vice president or CEO, whatever. Two people let's say, for example, right? I have a romantic relationship with my secretary. I don't have a secretary, by the way, but if I did, just like saying hypothetically, right?
Right.
And it's consensual and it doesn't affect anything else at the office. You're saying my employer can come back to me and say, this is a bad look. We don't want this to go on. Is that accurate?
It's, first of all, the premise is very accurate. The company is going to have questions. If that scenario, as you described it, comes up, any smart company with executives that are looking out for the company's reputation are going to have an issue with it, not so much as preventing you from having a relationship, but they might say, okay, so this is the reality situation. You're in a relationship with your secretary. We want to move you guys apart. Maybe have he or her work for somebody else, and we'll have you in different departments. And we'll try to eliminate, if something goes wrong here in the relationship, if it doesn't end up working out, as it often doesn't, well, then we don't want the company to be at the heart of this and saying, hey, while I was dating Aaron, I was forced to do A, B, and C, which I felt uncomfortable with, but I couldn't talk because he was my superior, all that stuff. So, you bring up a great point. It's just a relationship. What's so bad about that? It's not the relationship that they have a problem with. It's the breakdown of the relationship and where that can lead that they have a problem with. And that's what they're starting to take action even before. And again, it seems weird, but can you imagine you disclose a relationship and all of a sudden your job title changes and you're working in a different department? So it's like that Office episode where Michael and Holly had declared a relationship and they moved her out. They moved her to a completely different branch.
Right.
And that's what the new reality is of workplace disclosures. They really try to eliminate the risk there.
Okay. My next question would be, let's say you find yourself in this situation and you're dismissed from your job for whatever the reason. Your employer just thinks it's too hot to handle. What's your option in terms of saying, okay, you can't just do that to me, and fighting back and getting legal help and going to court? Right.
So you brought up a key point. The key threshold there is they cannot dismiss you. It's not a fireable offense to be in a workplace relationship. What can happen is if you do not disclose a workplace relationship, and you're supposed to, especially if you are in a position like head of HR, where policy is so important, that might be enough for you to have yourself terminated. But usually, in these cases, if you are an employee who's in a relationship and you don't disclose, the answer is not always termination. It could be a disciplinary action. They could warn you. They could even sometimes maybe a suspension with or without pay. You can have varying levels of discipline, but having someone lose their job is something very serious. It's basically you're telling someone you're not going to be able to earn a living. You have to find another job, which is very difficult. So in that case, I would say it's not always the answer, well, you didn't disclose, you're automatically fired.
Okay.
You can violate a company policy, but if it's not one that merits your absolute termination, then you file a complaint for wrongful dismissal and you go through the channels. I've seen that happen. I've seen companies that are over, when they want to punish someone, they take it too far. And when they do, not only can you get compensated for it, but you get all the different protections that the law is there for. It's not because you've done something wrong that you're automatically will be attributed with the most severe sanction. There are varying levels here, and people have to have common sense when they deal with these situations.
All right. Common sense. It's what it's all about. Chris, thank you so much. Appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Aaron.